Guys, in this video we're going to be doing some wrenching on my Primal RC Raminator monster truck, and also I'm going to go through with you in a bit more detail how I've set this up, how I've put it together, and how I run this a little bit differently to everybody else. Do you have a job you hate? Imagine if you could make more money from the comfort of your own home. That was my dream, and it became a reality once I started selling on eBay. And I've now taught hundreds of people my secrets. So just check out the results here from some of my students. So if you're sick of that 9 till 5 and you want to make more money than a doctor from the comfort of your own home, then click on the link down below and I'll show you how. So if you didn't watch the unboxing video, I'm going to put a link to that video up there. So watch that one first to let you know what's going on here. So this is the Primal RC monster truck, and this is the size of it compared to a Traxxas slash 4x4. So the first modification that I did to this is added rear wheel steer. So out of the box, it's a solid axle, no steering, and this is what's on the end of the axle. So I took those off and I just put the 4-wheel steer conversion kit on there. So you've got 2 servos, all the linkages, all that stuff. It's the radio that the car comes with, and I'm led to believe that these are actually quite a decent radio, but me being me, I wanted to have my rear steer on a separate toggle switch. So I can do the normal steering on the front here, and then I can do the rear steer on the toggle switch here separately. If I was to have it on here, then you've got to have it on the mode so that when you steer, it all steers at the same time, and then you've got to toggle through some different modes to get all the different rear steer modes. So I'm going to show you all the setup and the calibration to that a little bit later on. So let's get the body off, and then I'll show you the next little change that I made. So I actually lowered the suspension on this by 30mm. Well, probably a little bit more actually, because I wound these collars up all the way up as far as they can go, and then I made a new hole in the chassis here. So the stock shock location is in this hole here. So I drilled a new hole 30mm higher up and bolted the shock to that. And basically what that does, it just makes these lower arms run sort of near enough flat, which is when you look at the real monster trucks, that's how they run them. And I just think, personally, I think it looks a little bit better. So the problem that I have now is where I've lowered it so much, is that when you push the suspension down, these sway bar links here, they reach their maximum travel, and then they pop off. Watch. So I'm pushing this down here. There we go, and it's popped off. So I need to find some shorter ones of these. I don't actually have any. So I think the only option I have, because I want to take this out tomorrow, the only option that I have now is to cut these down and then weld them back together again. So I think I'm going to remove 30mm from this section here, then I can weld it back on here, and then hopefully it's going to look fairly neat. So I'm going to remove this plastic ball end here because it's probably going to melt being so close to the heat. This end I may leave and see how it goes. If it gets warm, I'll have to take those off as well. Boom! So next I want to talk to you about how I wired up the electrics and the Spectrum radio and all that stuff. So these servos, how they came, they're actually directly wired to this switch here, look. So we got the wires coming from the battery into the switch, and then if you look here, there's some heat shrink there, and a load of cables go into this and soldered to it. So usually the servo would plug directly into the receiver, but because these servos are so power hungry, it's probably not a good idea to have this many high voltage and big powerful servos all plugging into one receiver. So what they've done is they removed these two cables here, the positive and the negative, and wired it directly into the battery cable. So I can't be bothered to actually take off the lid, but the servos are actually plugged in with only the signal wire, and the other two wires going straight to the battery. So for the rear steer, the wiring wasn't actually there. So I've got the two servos there, and then we've got these coming into a Y lead. So this is a 60mm Y lead extension. So basically it's so you can plug two servos into one port on the receiver. So if you follow that back there, I routed it along the top 4-link bar here, up along the chassis here, and then I cut the positive and negative off and wired that directly into the battery, and then the signal wire just plugged into the receiver. So if you look at page 4 in the instruction manual, it will tell you in the book what each channel does if you actually follow this little diagram here. So I've made my own little diagram here, and if you look at the Spectrum receivers, they don't actually say channel 1, 2, 3, 4. Most receivers, they say channel 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. But on the Spectrum, it says steering, throttle, aux 1, aux 2, and aux 3. So I've plugged the front steering, which on here is channel 1, into the steering channel, throttle into the throttle channel, which is channel 2 on here. Aux 1 went to the rear steer, so that's this Y lead cable that I put in there. Aux 2 is the reverse servo, which is channel 4 on the stock receiver, and then aux 3 I've got wired in as the kill switch, which is the G button here. So then you have to actually program this radio so that these buttons do stuff. So you have to assign these switches. So I've got this F here assigned as the rear wheel steer. I've got this E one here. This one here is assigned to the reverse. And then the G button is the engine kill switch. So I'm just going to quickly run through here and show you what settings I've got in the radio. So travel wise, this is more of a case of you're going to have to find what works for you. So I've turned the travel down a little bit since the last video for the rear steering, because the rear steer was a little bit too much. The front steering I've left at 100%. But basically you're going to have to set this up for yourself, and you want to make sure that no servos are straining. You don't want this to be on maximum lock and the servos kind of forcing, because they're going to burn out. So you want to make sure that you turn it back just like, you know, so for maximum travel, it's not actually maxing out anywhere and the servos are under strain. So back, sub trims, again, you'll have to set these up, whatever works for you. So if you're running the stock servos, then these are probably going to be the same settings that you can use for the servo reverse. So all normal, aux 3, reverse. Speed, I've just left it all stock, although I may slow down the rear steer. The rear steer is a little bit aggressive when you hit it, because by it being on a toggle switch, it's actually not proportional. It's either all on or all off, just like on a real monster truck. But you can actually slow it down, and then it's going to be less sort of erratic. Dual rate, I've just left them as they are. Exponential, just left it as it is. Timer, don't bother. Binding, that's just binding it up. No mixing. I've turned the ABC completely off on that receiver. So you can either get a receiver that has no ABC, or you can switch it off. And I'm not going to go over in this video how you turn off the ABC. There are other videos on YouTube if you want to do that. And then aux assign is where you set up all these buttons to do what they got to do. So aux 1, F, 3 position. I'm not going to spend too long on here. So if you guys want to copy any of this, then you can just pause the video. There's aux 2. And there's aux 3. And by the way, if you're on this aux 3 here and you're trying to assign it and it doesn't work, just hit the button and it should automatically assign it. Now, another thing that you do need to do, and I'm not really sure how you do it, I just played about with it and eventually it worked. These here are stock. They mess about with the dual rates. So as you're doing the rear steer, then this starts beeping along and you can see all the dual rates changing on the screen. Now, you can go in here somewhere, and I can't remember where it is, and you can deactivate it. And I'm not going to try and even attempt to explain to you how I did it, because I don't even know myself. I just messed about with it, and luckily I got it off. So future upgrades, what I want to do to this, I want to see if I can get some softer springs. I see a lot of comments that people leave on other YouTube channels that the suspension on these looks really, really hard. And I agree, they do look very hard. So it would be nice if the suspension was a little bit more supple. So that's something I'm going to try and do, get softer springs. And then once I've got the softer springs, maybe I can put the shocks back into the position where they originally were. And then it's going to just sort of sit at this ride height with the softer springs. So that's something I want to do in the future. I've got the TMR engine coming with a tuned pipe. So hopefully that will be here in a couple of weeks. So then we can have a load more power. Also, RC Max. I've heard rumours that they're making an engine for this. And if they are, it's probably going to have loads and loads and loads of power. So maybe I will get that and try it out. We will see. It depends how much it costs. Then, as I said in the last video, I want to make a wheelie bar to come over the back, just like on a real monster truck, just poking out over the back of the body. So when this thing wheelies, instead of dragging that body shell along the floor and ripping it all up, it's going to hit the wheelie bar. They also do a conversion so you can run double shocks. And I may try that at some point. I'm going to see how I get on with these. If I start airing this thing out and these shocks start bending, then what I did on the Savage was to fit 2 shocks, only run 1 spring and 1 shock, so the spring rates remains the same. But then run half the weight shock oil in each shock. So then you've still got the same damping, you just got a stronger shock system. I'm probably going to replace this for a LiPo at some point. I believe all the servos in this are high voltage. So I'm going to double check, make sure that they really are, and then if they are, then I can replace that for a LiPo. Also, I need to mess about a little bit with the engine kill switch, because when I turn the radio off, it goes into failsafe, it cuts the throttle off, and it puts the brakes on, but this is still live. And I don't know if there's a way of adjusting this so that once the radio loses signal, it just cuts the engine off altogether. I mean, it's still safe. It's going to put the throttle into neutral and put the brakes on. But I'd rather, if it lost signal, it would just cut the engine out altogether. Body-wise, I probably won't put all the stickers on there. I quite like it red. You know, red's my colour. And I wouldn't mind, once I know what sort of design I'm going to go on my real monster truck, is maybe put sort of logos and graphics on there the same as that. I'll tell you what I really would love to do one day. But it's not going to happen anytime soon. I haven't really got time for it at the moment. But one day, I would love to make a scale chassis that looks exactly like the real thing, and just a smaller version. So that's going to be a lot of tube work, a lot of welding, a lot of trial and error. Obviously it can't all be the same because where the servos are mounted and the engine and stuff, but one day I may well do that. Also, I wouldn't mind taking these servos off of the axle and somehow try to mount them inside, and then either have some cables running to the steering, or maybe even try and rig up some real hydraulics so it's a lot more realistic. I mean, that will be quite a big project. I'm not planning to do it anytime soon, but it's something that I want to do one day. I want to make this thing even more realistic if I can. You know, if the chassis looked more realistic, we have the servos mounted inboard. At the moment, I'm just absolutely over the moon of this beast. I mean, it just looks so epic. And I still cannot get over the size of it. And when this thing goes faster, I mean, I'm just lost for words. Three, two, one, go! So next video, I want to take it along to Arc Raceway. I want to race it against some other RC cars. Maybe the races will get upset, I don't know. We will see, but we will have fun. And also I want to start jumping it and just seeing how it performs. So subscribe, bell button so you don't miss it, and I'll see you soon. But for now, let's check out some of these other videos.